Hello, everyone, and welcome to CV Chats. My name is Laleh Hancock, and I'm going to be your host as we have different conversations, different chats with people all around the globe about our bodies, different parts of our bodies, our businesses, our relationships, our finances, our children, different things that maybe may not be a conversation you would have with others. But we're going to have conversations here that hopefully will inspire you to whatever's going on in your life, but also what can we create, inviting a different conversation about vaginas, penises, bodies, and so much more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to CV Chats. My name is Laleh Hancock. I am your host, and today I have a very special friend from, wow, we're on the same time zone for the first time, I don't know, ever in like 10 years.
Oh,
My friend is Cara Wright. Welcome, beautiful.
no.
Yeah. You know, I could say a lot of things about Cara. Like the list will go on forever and ever and ever. She's a certified facilitator with Access Consciousness and has been working in a lot of different ways with babies, with mamas, with being a doula. She has, wow, 30 years or something like that, right? You've been doing
A
that.
lot. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So there's been like lots of conversations about, we don't say the word vagina in most of the time, but yeah, there's been a lot about bodies. There's been a lot about, hey, I'd like to get pregnant. Help me get
Yeah.
pregnant, and then help me bring this magical being out in the world and what
Mhm.
else is possible from there. And I
Yeah.
know you're also an X-Men facilitator, which is a whole other conversation we could have if we go there. Anything else you like to share?
I mean, I think the thing too that I have personal experience in is also a lot of conversation around. I mean, I know a lot about vaginas. That's one thing I was going to say. Like I have worked with women and birth and pregnancy for a really long time. And then when I found the tools of access consciousness, I started to, one of the things that the byproduct of using the tools of access, getting your bars run, et cetera, as you start to actually connect with what you are actually being as um, as a being in the world. There's so many things that I was facilitating and doing energetically that I had no idea I was doing. All those years that I was a doula, all those years that I was, doing prenatal and postnatal yoga, all those years that I was in the birth space with women. I had no idea how energetically aware I was of like the whole process of the bodies involved in it, both the mom and the baby, of the baby and the being that was, birthing itself. There's just so much stuff that I like in hindsight, I was like, holy crap, I was so much more aware in those environments than I realized I was. And so one of the things that has come since I started working using the tools of access is I also have a specialty called Baby Talk, where I just like teach women how to not only communicate with the being that's coming to be their baby, but also like how does that all work? Because birth and like getting pregnant and birth and pregnancy and like it's really a mystery, right? It's like it used to be in times, it's like a mystery work. Women were the holders of it and it was just this thing that um I don't even know, like there's not like a lot of words, but it's like there is a mystery to that whole process that has been lost in the last 100 years. I mean, the industrialization of birth just has created all sorts of havoc in that realm. And for me to get back to that mystery and the magic of what it actually is such a, I think, needed thing because it's not a medical procedure. It's not a scientific adventure like people think it is. I mean, yes, that's part of it, but it's much more than a sperm and egg get together. There's like there's a lot more that goes on. So um, it's one of the things that I like to talk about. You know,
Wow, that's really cool. Actually, like, yeah, let's just jump in, let's just not worry about the little steps forward.
Well,
So let's talk about that. I know, for example, when I was younger, like there was this communion that my body and I were being together that I didn't know back then was not normal. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like back then I could have told you, "Oh, I know I'm about to get a cold or a cough or something like that." Like I knew before it would happen. And I was like, "Wow, what's going on here?" And even like being a teenager and having cramps and, like the intensity of the ways my body was communicating with me, and it
mhm,
wasn't until, and I've done a million things before Access Consciousness, and yet it wasn't until, getting my bars run
mhm,
and starting to ask questions. Because, one of the tools in Access is, who does this belong to? And you ask, is it mine? Is it someone else? Is it something else? Something else, a lot of times, is the earth, because our bodies are from the earth. And guess what? Our body communicates what's going on, on the planet. And like even the cramps, I didn't know. Like I was looking at it as, oh, my mom told me she had it growing up. I'm
mhm.
having it because I'm at this age and I have to. Like there was no question as a teenager in my world. And but when I came to Access, I was like, who did that belong to? And I realized it wasn't mine. It was
Mhm.
those moments that I actually was receiving from the earth, and the earth required more energy and things. And when I started to actually like really start to ask questions and realize all the ways that I quote thought my body was talking to me about pain of what it required, a lot of times was my body sharing information of outside of us,
Mhm.
you know? And including, like, I knew the day I was one, not, I wasn't even one day late. I was like, I knew that day I'm pregnant. Like, it took me 5 times to walk in the store to get the pregnancy test. But it's just like, I knew I'm pregnant.
Mhm.
And so, like, when you were talking about it's beyond the egg, it's beyond the sperm, and there's this whole other journey. Like, let's open up that door of like, you know, what else? What else would you like to talk about there?
Well, I mean, geez, there's so much. I mean, the thing that our bodies are so amazing at, and I think women's bodies in particular, I mean, obviously you know, this is a very thing specific to a woman's body. And it's like we have always been very aware, like our bodies have always given us information about the environment. It's always
Yeah.
given us information about what's going on with the planet and with the earth, as you said. I mean, it's always been very connected to those types of things. I think the more that we have lost that connection, the more, I mean, and you talked about cramps as an example, but the more everything has become painful because we're disconnected from what those things actually are and what they are speaking to and through us. And so it's like, and it just, that just, when you become pregnant, it just amplifies. The one thing that I know about pregnant bodies and women and that whole experience is that everything is amplified. So it doesn't really matter like what it is. It's like you're going to be more aware of it. You're going to have more sensitivity to it. And a lot of the ways in which I work with women is that, there's all of the common pregnancy things that happen, just like cramps are pretty common, like you said. And there is that
Yeah.
tool who does this belong to. It's also a misidentification and misapplication of what it actually is. We're not actually taught that our bodies are energetic and that we're energetic beings and that we're aware of these things. And I always talked about in my prenatal classes and even in my birth preparation classes is like when you become pregnant, you're not just growing this body for this being, you have to energetically shift in order to include this new being in your universe, in your realm. And
Yeah.
you become, and in order to be able to do that, there's an amount of barriers that have to dissolve and dissipate. And there's amount of, you have to be more vulnerable and more aware. And a lot of women don't know that that's what that is. And so it shows up as nausea. It shows up as, upset. It shows up as like a lot of the things that like pregnancy symptoms. It's like, well, are they actually physical symptoms, or is it your whole system and way beyond your body is shifting and changing in order to include this new energy in your realm, in your world?
Yeah. And thank you for that. Cause, when I was pregnant with the twins, like what I thought was a problem, like I had like what they were calling double the hormones, early on. And when I
Or
went
double the
in,
being. It could be either, both.
yeah, yep, yep. I was 10 weeks and I went in and just to have an ultrasound to see, hey, what's going on with my body? And the lady was like, oh, do you see this? This is going to be the head. This is going to be the hands. This is going to be the feet. Oh, by the way, 30 years ago wasn't as beautiful. And like you could see everything you see now. And then she's like, do you see this other thing here? That's going to be the other hands, the other hands, and the other feet. And I was like, what? But it was like how much, what was required by me and my body, and like truly us, that oneness of us, what we were co creating together, really was very different. And
Totally.
gosh, I wish I knew I had all these tools, when I was pregnant. Oh, what else would have been
Uh,
possible then? But
Totally. The tools are so helpful. And I think for me, it's like having the tools started to give me clarity of what I was actually aware of, because we're not given this information. We're not told that we're energetic beings. We don't talk about it in the way that actually empowers you to go, I don't just have double the hormones in my body. I have double the being in my universe. That is going to
mm,
alone, how you have to like rearrange we don't even, I don't think that's why it's a mystery art. It's like we don't even have any cognition about what it actually is and how it actually is created. It is a miracle. But it's not it's a miracle that we are actually like co-creating with these two beings, two in your case, like, or with the being. Um, and it's not rhetoric. It's actually what's going on. There was so much, and like for years and years and years, and I was I'm jumping around now, but I was very aware of energy. I was very like, I did yoga, but it was very I liked the energy practices of yoga, the chakras and the nadis and the whole thing. But then I also had like a medical background. I had a bachelor's of science, and I had trained with a woman who was a labor and delivery nurse, and I had a ton of like this reality, what pregnancy and birth is,
yeah,
like what women are experiencing out in the world. And so one of the things that I did a lot was try to give them the ability to have both in their worlds, because so many women are missing that part of it. It just becomes like you go to the doctor for the doctor to tell you what's going on with your body from outside of you.
yeah,
And you don't really actually have any sort of connect, like you're not aware. You're connected. You just think you're really like emotional, and you've got nausea, and you've got all these like food aversions, or food, I have to have this. You've got all these things, but you don't realize that's actually your awareness of the what's going on. And so like talking to women about what that is for them, because it's different for everybody, is like a really fun thing, because they start like, it's not so far gone from a woman's psyche that even if you just give her, hey, what if it's this? What if it's not just that? What if it's also could be this? That's all that it really takes for a woman to go like, hang on, I actually am aware of something. And pregnancy is one thing, but when you go into a birth space and a woman's actually in that process of birthing that new body and that being into the world, like it is so dynamic and it is so like intense,
yeah,
that again, if women had the ability to connect to the mystery of it all, the mystery art of it all, like what they're actually facilitating and catalyzing and being and doing, I think that women would have different experiences. I also think they would choose different choices. Um, so what would it take for things to start to slide back in the other direction and stop being so medicalized and stop being so industrialized? That's not to say that those things aren't helpful and necessary when they are, but when it just becomes this blanket, this is how I'm gonna like, I'm just gonna get through this, or I'm gonna check out, or I'm gonna, whatever that is, I'm gonna just let this person tell me what's going on with my own body. Um, it becomes a different experience.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It wasn't until, my gosh, many years of the tools of Access Consciousness and attending many of Dr. Dane's Symphony of Possibilities classes. There was one in Sweden or Copenhagen. I can't remember where we were. I think Sweden. And he started to facilitate a doula who was talking about, the different babies and communicating with the babies before the actual physical birth. And I actually realized those 4 years I worked in maternity because I was supposed to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I was working in a hospital and many departments, but one of my jobs was actually working in labor and delivery. And it was interesting. I hadn't recognized that when I was working, we didn't have emergencies anymore.
Mhm.
Like even people were like, oh, emergency, cesarean, blah, blah. It would just be easy, like delivery was so easy. Like people would say, I'm not sure what happened. We went from like, it's going to be crazy to just, it went to easy. And I never had acknowledged, oh, they didn't have that in the morning shift if I was working in the evening shift or whatever, and it's also recognizing how much, whether you are the one who has the baby, the desire to get pregnant or all of that, but also like the influence that our beings and our bodies are to people around us,
Totally.
and to the earth and everything else. And I'm curious, like, with the doula, it wasn't something that I chose during my pregnancy. It's funny, back then I was so much more scientific. It wasn't even in my universe of a possibility. um I now wish, I'm like, what would it have been, But with the
I hear that.
twins,
If I had a penny for every time someone says, I wish I would have had you around when um, you know, when I had my babies, I, you know, I think there's a lot of women that have that, where they would have chosen
yeah,
different if they knew it was available. And it's not to say that every doula out there is like like showing up to a birth similarly to me or to you. Like it's funny that
yeah, totally.
because when I first found Access, I was like so friggin' excited about everything. And I went to all the classes like, right away. And the one class, like that was just when SOP was starting to they had just, I think, created it shortly before that. And it was the one class that I really kind of avoided. And I ended up going to an SOP like a year or two after I became a facilitator because that's when they made you had to do an
Oh
SOP,
yeah.
keep your license. And I was like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to go. But I was like actively avoiding it because in my world, I didn't think that I like it was like not for me. Like I was like, I can't actually, I don't think I can do that. So I didn't want to go. And like, you know, and what was really interesting is I showed up at that SOP that first day and I realized, holy shit, I was actually being this energy with every birth that I went to. Like I was already I didn't know to call it that, but that is the energy I was. Like I had a lot of my moms say that I was like a tranquilizer at birth because everybody that was in the birth space. And I remember like doing that because the more frantic people are in a birth space, the more intense it is for the mom and baby. So like one of the things that I would do is I would just like energetically just go through the like room and just be like, no, we're not doing that. Like if you're gonna be in hysterics, there's the door. Like I was very like, so people like I said, and I didn't even cognitively know I was doing that. And it didn't connect until years later when I went to an SOP class and I was like, oh my God, this is what I was doing the whole time. And I mean, everybody's different, like how you are as a doula, like there's a million different types of doulas. And I was very unique because I had not had babies. Most doulas that you find, um, they had babies. They had an experience of a doula, and so then they became a doula because it was such a great experience for them. The lot, like most. In fact, I had a really strange reputation because of that, because I had not had babies. And I ended up being a doula just out of like, I was a doula before doulas were popular because I used to teach prenatal yoga and I would connect with these women. And then I started having women from my classes ask if I'd come to their birth. So I was doing doula work before a doula was a thing. And then I realized a year or two later, oh, that's what I'm doing.
I love it. But it is, it's like, but that's also your body. That's your body guiding you and leading you to those areas that you have these strengths that maybe cognitively we don't recognize. Like
Yeah.
it took me all those years to come to a symphony of possibilities to recognize what my body and we were being 20 years earlier, like
Well, the other thing that was really weird was that because there were some people that would come to my classes, some women, and they would hire me, and I would be like, I do not know why this woman's hiring me. There's like no, like, we don't even really like each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was not this, like, but I was like, called, quote unquote, to work with this woman. And again, years later, with the Talk to the Entities tools in Access Consciousness and Shannon O'Hara, I was like, oh my God, I wasn't being hired by that woman. There was a lot of births that I went to because the being was like, no, you're going to be there.
yeah,
It's like, so the babies were like actually pulling me in and drawing me to certain women. And that wasn't true for every woman. But for some, it was like, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. Cause I would just be like, why is this woman hiring me, paying me like we're not on the same page, And so
yeah,
it's just funny because it's like, oh, I realized then that I was communicating with beings all along. And like when there would be things that would show up in a birth, like I would actually communicate with the being of like, hey, look, like, you're in a really funky position. Can you move? And this isn't like cognitive, it's more, I would just be an energy or like give that being a picture and then all of a sudden everything would turn around, or I would give them information. So even if the birth was going a little bit different than anybody thought it was going to, then I would like, they would know. And, there's just so much more available there. Again, it's like, it's not just the process, it's not just the physical process of what it is to birth the baby. There is so much more going on.
yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. You're bringing me so many memories. When I was 5 months pregnant, so the minute they found out I'm having twins at 10 weeks, I was assigned two doctors. One who I gave him a list of 20 questions, and at the end I said, "Congratulations, you're going to be my doctor," because I had worked in maternity for so long. I was like, I'm going to be picky. And then the second was a high risk doctor. And at 5 months, every month I'd go see the high risk, and he would do a sonogram, just make sure the babies were okay. And at the 5th month, he looked and he said, "I have some bad news." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Both babies have a cyst in their brain and it may be Down syndrome. And if it is, you have the right to abort pregnancy." And I was like, I mean, at 5 months, I had these babies growing inside me. Like, that's not what I wanted to hear from my doctor. And he's like,
Right.
"Yes. And this is a Catholic hospital that we're at. So we won't be able to do it here. But if you choose, we'll do it elsewhere." And I remember going home, and I even had a talk with my husband at the time. And I was like, "Listen, I know this is going to be probably not easy for us. Two Down syndrome babies. Yeah, that's going to be a handful." And I said to him, "I love you, but if you got to go, go." Like literally, like I gave him that option. And he looked at me like, "What? No, we're going to do this together." I was like, "Okay." And that night, I had a dream, and it was really interesting. One baby we called Mariah, and one baby we called Brianna. So I literally would know when Mariah was moving or when Brianna's moving. I couldn't tell you back then how I knew. I just knew, but now I know. They were communicating, and Mariah literally energetically, it seemed like she like popped out of my belly, and she was like standing right next to me, and she's like, "It's going to be okay." we're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I didn't tell anyone. My husband didn't know. Like that story, I've never even told
Of course
anybody.
you did. God
Oh
forbid.
my
That
God.
that doesn't
Oh,
happen, you weirdo.
yeah. But it was like, there was something that I just knew everything was going to be okay. And I told the doctor, no, we're not aborting. And then the next night, I had what was called like a fever. My body started to shake. And I was like, it seemed like my body kept getting colder and colder and colder. Movement, like as if I was like on a table and I was like wiggling. Like it was just the wackiest, evening. And then everything was fine the next morning, no fever, nothing. And I called my doctor and I told him, he's like, next time you gotta call me, you gotta go to the hospital, you can't have a fever. I'm like, but I'm fine. It's like, no, we just don't know. And then my next visit to that high risk doctor, no cyst, nothing wrong with the babies, they're fine, you know. And I was like, wow, like truly, you just said this mystery
Mm-hmm.
and the miracles of what's actually possible if we relax.
Well, that, and it's like, I think that's one of the things that, unfortunately, because of how we approach pregnancy and birth here, women, it's like that oftentimes, and I mean, it can also happen. I mean, we also have lost the way in which women, like, became women when we started our menses. There used to be, like, in the old cultures, there used to be a tradition of
Yeah.
like giving women the information of like, you have more access to more things now. Like there is more mystery and miracles, and like there's more going on here than you've been told. And it was like a woman would be, inducted into that. And then, all the years of religion and all the years of like industrialization and all that, it has become something not that. And I look around and I'm like, there's so much of like where girls are emotionally and like mentally and physically, that I just know it isn't just about the physical bodies have changed. It's that they're missing that ability. Like there's such a or not the ability, but they're missing that gift of, that's when they get to actually connect with how magical they are. Like that's one of those doorways into that. You said that in the beginning of this. It's a doorway. And pregnancy is a very similar doorway. It's like a lot of times that's when women first realize they have friggin' intuition, like a mother's intuition. No one talks about it until you become a mother,
Yeah.
right? Well, like newsflash, you've had it all along. But it's almost like when you have that, like, quote unquote reason, to then it's like women will choose it more often, but they're still doing it from a place of like both hands behind their backs, because they don't, no one's talking about it. No one's talking about that. Of course you had that ability to communicate, have the beings, like you were able to listen to what the being was saying to you. It allowed the shift of whatever that was, and we don't have to know what it is. And that's one of the ways we fucked up birth so dynamically, like thinking that we have to know what's going on the whole time in order for it to go well. That was the beginning of the fuck up. Also, like, people not wanting to follow the timing of birth. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so many women don't realize you birth your babies the way you do now in most of the world because people want weekends off. It's that
Yeah.
simple. They want it to be
Well,
timed. They want to be able to know when women are having babies. Well, that's not, that is not how Mother Nature works. That is not how the earth works. There is a natural timing to things. And in order to override that, you override a lot of things.
yeah. My girls came 4 weeks early,
Mhm.
but their lungs were mature. Like they were healthy babies. The only
Mhm.
thing was they were colicky. And back then, I thought colic, I mean, I studied it so much trying to figure out an answer to colic. Now I get my kids were freaking X-Men, superpower, aware. Like so
Right.
much of what them and their bodies were aware of had nothing to do with dietary. And I did so many things. But even like you said, like I always ask them, tell me when you're ready to come. And
Mhm.
that day, literally, I was like, hey girls, your aunt's going on vacation. When would you like to come? And that's the day they came. But
Yeah.
how they came wasn't because I was due to go to the hospital. It was like, I didn't feel Brianna moving for a few hours. And it literally was what I thought might be something wrong that turned into, no, bitch, everything's great. It's just time. You know, they don't believe in the time cycle of the doctor. They're just telling you, we're ready. Let's go.
And it's tricky. It's a really tricky place to be in, because when you are a mom and you're pregnant and you have this connection with these babies, it's like that's one of the reasons why things have gotten so skewed, is because it's very easy to like, you don't want anything to happen, bad. You don't know what, you don't have that wisdom of an elder woman in the tribe going da 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 da. You don't have that. So all you have is like, your care provider. And for a lot of women, that's a doctor. And, so it's like they handle things a particular way. So it's like, it's not to say that you, like you said, like you thought it was a problem, you realized, no, this was just them letting you know it was time. And it's like, how do you weave into that sea of information, that sea of definition, conclusion, result, answer,
Yeah.
like you're knowing as a woman? That's really like, and to whatever degree you can, it's like, I think empowering women that they do know. It doesn't mean every woman's going to have, going to go run off into the ocean and birth with dolphins. Like that's for most women, that's like ridiculous. And what actual mystery, knowing, awareness, magic can you tap into that this experience can actually gift to you if you know, first of all, know to ask for it, and second of all, like be willing to receive it.
And we're talking about pregnancy, but it's not just about pregnancy. It's really bringing us again to, this is who we are. This is us and our bodies. And we each have a choice to how much awareness we would like to have. Like
Oh,
there's some people who are going to listen to this and it's like, not for you. And there's other people who are going to be like, it's about you and your body and starting there. You know what I mean? Adding another baby to it. That's an addition to it, a different kind of conversation. But it really starts from, do you know when you have to pee? Yes, you do. Because you're already communicating with your body, whether you know it or not,
well,
but
yeah.
it's like
There's something going
enhancing from there.
I love that. I mean, it's basic, but again, it's like we do really weird things. We do really weird things that take us away from that knowledge, that knowing, that being able to be so connected with what your body requires and desires that you just can follow the energy with it. I mean, it's the conversation is vast. And like
Yeah.
there will be people that watch this, but there'll also be women that'll go, oh my God, that makes so much sense, which is what I spent like my first, I'd say 3 to 4 years, and it's still happening, but really the first 3 to 4 years of being an access facilitator and using the tools was such a, like actually being like present with what I was aware of all those years and what I was actually facilitating and how I was actually energetically catalyzing things, like I had all these talents and abilities. I was talking to babies, you know what I mean? It was just like, and there's such a beauty to being able to acknowledge that. So even if, one woman sees this and she can acknowledge that she was actually communicating with her baby all through the process, to me, that's like a win, because that's what so many of us, so many women are missing. That if that started to like flow back into our cultures, oh, it
Yeah.
just enriches everything.
Yeah. I could be having a conversation with you forever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. I'm
Thank
so
you for
grateful
having
you're here. And like there's different ways you guys can find Cara. So in the show notes, there will be her website, and she does a wealth of different things. from
Thank you.
facilitation to the doula to everything else so that they can find out more. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go?
I mean, I would say the best place if you're interested in working with me, I work with people one-on-one. I also do classes, and I really follow the energy with what I'm excited about in that moment, and it ping pongs all over the place. I learned a while ago not to try to control that. So my website's a great place to just see what's available. You can always ping me through my website if you have any information. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, not all of them, but I'm on YouTube, blah, 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 all the things. You can find me.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you guys for being here. Will you help us kind of spread this? Because I wonder, like, not just people who want to have babies, but like, if there was a moment here that also inspired you from something in your childhood, or some aha moment for you, like, what contribution can that be for other people too? So I wonder where this can actually trickle out into the whole world. Because this is why CV Chats actually got created, was all these classes we do and the conversations we have that no one's having those conversations. And if more people knew it's even possible, what else is available? So I'm really excited. We have this conversation, Cara, and I'd love to bring you forward another moment too. We can have like a more of a deep dive in a different particular topic. But yeah, thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for being here with CV Chats. Hopefully you had some awarenesses, information, some new tools to help you with whatever's going on in your life. Maybe even gain some more communication with your body. And we invite you to, who do you know that can also have this conversation contribute to? Will you help us in spreading the seeds and inviting this to go even deeper all around the globe, to people to know something else is available for us, and we can choose something different with our bodies every single day. So thank you for being here. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or would like to have a particular topic on the next shows, comment below and let us know. You can always also send us a message in our Facebook. We also have Instagram with Conscious Vagina, and you can also contact us at globalwellnessforall.com/contact. See you soon.